There's a funny meme that someone posted this on 4chan a long time ago, that any sufficiently free internet space becomes right wing, and the left can only maintain the space if they have hard moderation and censorship. That seems to be the case. If you look at Facebook, in spite of the censorship, the top posts are still Daily Wire, Dan Bongino, Fox News, etc.
I think that's right, and I think it's in any period of history where you have one faction, social faction, political faction, whatever, trying to maintain an ideology based on complete myth, which many of the assumptions of the cultural left are, gender is a social construct, all of these things. As soon as you have free speech, that'll be threatened, and the most popular people will be the people who challenge that.
The only way they maintain this in popular, that's what cancel culture is. You see what happened in San Francisco with that guy, the free speech rally? He got his teeth knocked out.
The guy got punched? Yeah.
Think about how crazy it is that this guy decided to step up and say the billionaires are bad, so Antifa shut up and punched him in the face.
Yeah. And
are they working for the billionaires?
Yeah, calling him the N-word as well.
Over and over again.
It's weird alliance between the cultural left, which used to be the anti-establishment left, and the corporations,
the billionaires,
and the neoconservative foreign policy think tanks. They're all aligned. They're all aligned on this.
What is this?
Yeah. All in sync.
You've got the neocon never Trumpers who ran full speed the Democrats after Trump booted them out. You've got Antifa beating people up on behalf of them. A guy comes out and he's like, "Yo, it's really bad that international, multinational billion-dollar corporations are restricting the rights of the people." Punched in the face.
What the heck?
Yeah. Joe Biden is funded by Wall Street. Trump is winning on small donors. Biden is winning on Wall Street donors. And Bernie Sanders is supporting Joe Biden. Ugh. Talk about backwards and insane. The billionaires in this country are terrible, destroying everything. Now go vote for the guy funded by the billionaires. To be fair, Trump is a billionaire himself. So, I guess it's still a weird circumstance.
It's very strange. I think the most frustrating thing about the social justice warrior left, the Antifa left, the left that'll punch you in the face, is that they pretend to be anti-establishment. They've been doing that for years, but actually they found themselves in alliance with elites and with corporations because they're the only powers in society that actually, suppress the truth. And they need the truth to be suppressed because their entire ideology is based on nonsense.
It's so stupid. None of it makes sense. Antifa going out and hitting somebody because he's complaining about billionaires? That's just weird to me.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're being manipulated by the powers because they're not smart. I don't want to say they're stupid because it's a broad generalization, but anyone that's out on the street just doing random street violence is pretty dumb, I think. It's a dumb thing to do. It's not a smart way to get your point across.
Well, these are the same people who trashed Seattle in 1999 in the trade protest. They were all about, ending the bad trade deals. Then along comes a president who said, I'm going to end the bad trade deals. And he does end the bad trade deals. And now they're just beating up his supporters in the street.
Dude, look at Bernie Sanders in 2015. Seriously, go back. A lot of people might not remember this. You go back and you Google search Bernie and Trump, and you'll find a bunch of articles saying Bernie and Trump are very similar. And there was a point where Bernie had to be like, I'm not like him. But a lot of their core policies were the same. Illegal immigration was bad. Bernie was fairly moderate on gun issues when he said it was a rural versus urban debate. Because he's in Vermont, he's like, we don't have the same problems because people in Vermont like their guns. You had him saying the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, was a problem, and we got to. What happened to that guy? All of a sudden now he's like the billionaires, but they're all funding Joe Biden, so go vote for him. It's like he immediately just said, "Please let me in the establishment." Trump, on the other hand, kicked the door in.
An alliance between the populist left and the populist right is probably the thing that terrifies the establishment the most. I kind of think that's. If you look back through history, there's always, new consensuses formed, new political consensuses formed to replace the old ones. The Reagan consensus, the neoliberal consensus replaced the FDR consensus. There's a new consensus waiting to happen. The populist left and the populist right are forming the nucleus of it, but it's being held back by this establishment class that simply won't let go.
I think that was starting to happen during Occupy Wall Street. So the early days of Occupy Wall Street, when I was down there, I remember seeing a really like a 60-year-old man and woman, and they were sitting in chairs with an American flag. Nobody complained, and they had it set up, and people were talking about it because the core of what brought people out was the big banks and Wall Street are corrupting our system. It's revolving door politics. The whole thing is broken. And you had conservatives, libertarians, and leftists who had shown up. Then along came intersectionality, identity politics. The older people who could not live in the park ended up leaving. The younger people did. And then these wealthy, college-educated Brooklynite kids with trust funds, not all of them, but a handful of them, I know them personally, they are trust fund kids, started preaching intersectionality and identity politics. And then all of a sudden, you end up with someone, Serena Williams, who is a black woman worth tens of millions of dollars, and she's oppressed. And the homeless guy sleeping under the bridge is an oppressor because he's white. What that did was it fractured any possibility of the populist left and right coming together. Because now you got AOC, who is full on board with overtly racist ideology. That is like, it's freaky how racist these people are. They're calling it anti-racism and then literally saying, but we should have racial discrimination. Yeah, okay, that's racism. Well, no, but we're anti because it's for good things. I don't care what you think it's for. It's funny because the ideology they espouse, they're like, racism is prejudice plus power. Therefore, only white people can be racist. Anti-racism is quite literally the same thing when it's for minorities and you discriminate against specific minorities and other racial groups for the benefit of particular racial groups. It's like the same thing.
Yeah. Well, when you say prejudice plus power, who is more powerful today than Google? The
Good
most
question.
racist people in the world today are in Silicon Valley. They're programming the algorithms that run our world. If you get the book, read the part on machine learning fairness. Machine learning fairness.
Oh, that's the good sensor thing, right?
That's actually not the good sensor. This
really?
is something different. Machine learning fairness is an entirely new field set up in universities, and it's being funded by Silicon Valley, and they have their own machine learning fairness departments now. The point is to bring computer science and critical race theory together.
Whoa.
And left-wing
Can we not?
sociology and left-wing feminism. They want the assumptions of those left-wing fields to be embedded in computer science.
That's impossible. It's functionally impossible.
Well, this is what I say in the book, right? So an algorithm, an unbiased algorithm, is just a machine for noticing patterns. It's a machine for analyzing data. And pattern recognition, noticing data, analyzing data, is actually inherently right-wing because it busts politically correct narratives. Imagine if you train a machine to look at crime data, or you train a machine to look at, the data of women going into certain fields or certain educational fields, or train a machine to who's more likely to commit a terrorist attack around the world. That's going to spit out some very politically incorrect conclusions. So this is why they created machine learning fairness, to bias the algorithms. Obviously, they call it fairness. It's the opposite of that.
So I guess theoretically they could put weight in them. If this word emerges, then apply it. But I don't see it working. I did a segment on my second channel talking about the problem with Wikipedia and critical theory in general. The example I used is transgender. And so what the leftists started doing was pulling the clip out of context to make it seem like I was anti-trans. Here's what I actually said. If you go on Wikipedia, which is a very formulaic and logic-based system, granted, it's subject to manipulation and bias, but the way it works is very simple. Present a source. What does the source say? Include it, cite it. So you go to Wikipedia, and you have this web of all of these different articles that interlink with each other. Go to woman on Wikipedia, and what's it say? It says a woman is an adult human female. And then you click female, and it says barring, certain abnormalities, irregularities, females are the members of the, a species that produce ova, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you go to male, that produce a sperm, and then it says man, an adult human male. Then go to trans woman on Wikipedia, and it gives you this very different definition. So it specifically says that the point I'm trying to make is, how do you have the idea that a trans woman is a woman, but these two articles can't connect to each other, right? So if a woman is an adult human female, then a trans woman can't, according to Wikipedia, be a woman because a woman produces ova. So it doesn't make sense. The logic of the system is impeded by the fracturing of what the ideology represents, which is why so often you hear anti-SJW types say, define woman, because we can very easily, using a system like Wikipedia, but in critical theory, you can't. So the point I'm getting to is, if you try,
this is why they have to invent the rhetorical trick of gender and sex are two separate things. So you can still have the biology, but you also have this concept of gender.
But that's actually fine.
Yeah.
The problem is that when you have Wikipedia telling you, so okay, what they need to do now is they need to go in and they change the definition of what woman is. So that's why you get anti-SJW people saying define woman, because the official definition on Google, Merriam-Webster, and in Wikipedia is adult human female.
What they should do is make trans woman one word and have a completely different definition.
Offensive.
Well, I mean, it's
that's
logical.
the problem. That's the problem with critical theory. So, and again, I'm not saying any of this to say trans women are or are not. I'm pointing out the clash in the existing system on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not going to create some kind of nebulous understanding of critical race theory. Or, I'm sorry, critical theory in general, intersectional left. When you go to them, they will hold contradictory views because they're human beings. But a computer doesn't do that. It can. But you go on there and you're like, this makes no sense. These things don't connect. But it's like, how could Wikipedia say two different things at the exact same time?
Quantum computing.
I guess, sure. Yes, both exist at the same time.
That'll help us define trans theory.
There you go. Perfect.
What we're trying to do with
Well, there will be some difficulties like that, but at the end of the day, what these leftists are trying to do is every definition that these algorithms are trained on, everything they're trained to recognize, whether it's hate speech or misinformation, the people doing the defining, the people training the algorithms how to recognize those things will be left-wingers. So it'll always be their definition. There will be some cases where, like gender, where the definition is very, very tricky for the reasons you mentioned, but there will be other cases where the algorithm will only recognize the left-wing definition of something.
Is this all stemming from liberal college kids like Zuckerberg, Larry, and Sergey just happen to be the ones that coded it from the beginning?
No, I don't think so. I've had this conversation with Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, who did the Sokol Squared hoax. Very, very smart individuals. And Peter Boghossian, for instance, he believes, and this was a while ago we had this conversation, so I don't, maybe his opinion's changed, that the intersectionality emerged through the colleges in the 80s and all this stuff. My argument was maybe, but it only exists today because of the accident of the Facebook algorithm. And so I've mentioned this several times, but for you, Alan, I'll tell it now and to everyone listening. Basically what happened is in the early days of Facebook, they were trying to figure out how to maximize site longevity, like how long someone was on the website. And so they started creating feed algorithms. It was a combination of factors. In the early days of Facebook, you just got reverse chronological feed, right? You followed somebody, you were friends. If they post something, you got it. As the site grew bigger and bigger, people started following and liking more and more pages. You end up with someone who on average had 300 friends, but also liked 300 pages, and their feed was so fast they couldn't read through it. So Facebook said, let's create an algorithm to make sure we're showing them what they most likely are to enjoy and click on. What ended up happening was around the same time, digital blogs started popping up, and it was partly because of Facebook. They started making money, becoming successful. The articles were getting shared on Facebook. Facebook liked that because it was creating activity on the platform. And then these companies like Huffington Post, et cetera, started making money. But something interesting happens when you incorporate Facebook constantly updating its algorithm to work better and better and better. We ended up getting waves of police brutality videos. There was a period where there was one website that was ranked global top 400 or something when it was nothing but police brutality videos. Why? Because it was what people were clicking on. So Facebook kept shoving it in people's faces, just beating them over the head with it like, this is what you want. And it was shockingly crazy footage of cops just beating people and beating people. So what happens is the news organizations, the blogs that started writing shock content, started seeing more traffic and making more money. Eventually they learned, wait a minute. There's more to life than just police brutality. There's also racism and sexism, right? So some websites started writing racism. Some said sexism. Racism is X, sexism is Y. You get X views or Y views. Combine the two and you get X plus Y views. Intersectional articles started getting way more traffic. The racist, sexist police brutality, targeting, black people, and boom, Black Lives Matter pops into existence. So what happens is these news organizations realized, and whether it was on purpose or not, they made more money when they wrote about all of these subjects combined. And now you actually see this stuff. Like Vice had one article that was really funny that it was like black trans women of color fighting back against police brutality for Black Lives Matter. And it's like they just jammed every possible keyword in there because Facebook would then share it with more communities. They would get more traffic and make more money. Thus, intersectionality was perfect for this algorithm. It started to emerge because the algorithm was trying to find what, people would want to see the most.
Here's what I'd add to that. I think you're right. That is what happened. I remember that distinctly in 2013, 2014. But I also remember that the backlash against that also did mad traffic.
Right.
So
exactly.
It sort of naturally corrected. If they allowed it to happen, it would have naturally corrected itself.
No.
Because people would have got sick of it. They would have wanted some challenges to the prevailing viewpoint.
They did. And it created the anti-SJW movement.
Exactly, but then they shut that down.
But, I mean, not sort of, but it was polarizing. It was creating two tribes. It was the reaction and the opposite reaction. And so, yes,
isn't that how politics has always worked, though? It's always been reaction and anti-reaction. I think what was happening on social media was the things people wanted to talk about that maybe the establishment class didn't want to talk about. They were sort of out of touch by then. That rose to the fore. But it was still a battle between two distinct sides, and I think the anti-SJW side was actually winning because they had the facts, they had the arguments on their side. Their content was going just as viral. They were the ones who got Trump elected.
Exactly.
So if the social media companies hadn't clamped down, I think this would have resolved itself naturally.
I don't know if it would have resolved itself. I think we're still in it.
Oh, we're absolutely still in it, but I think it's being prolonged by internet censorship. If you took that control off, I think you just have a natural conflict between two political factions, and one of them would win, and that would be the anti-SJW side. They're artificially controlling it to help the SJWs stay in power, control the narrative, even though it's completely discredited.
Well, so here's what ends up happening. When you get someone on the right who is fringe and extreme and crazy or whatever, they get nuked immediately, just gone. On the left, however, they're allowed to keep doing it. So this is what I was mentioning earlier. You end up with two sides, one where the fringe elements of the right have been purged and all that's left are suit-wearing, milquetoast vanilla conservatives.
Yeah, who won't do anything about social media censorship, by the way.
Seriously.
But the left is have you seen this video of six videos of women in their cars screaming at the top of their lungs?
Oh, yeah. Have you seen the one where they mash it all together?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So you have these videos where these women are like, no, Trump, and they're screaming. I tell you this. You take a milquetoast vanilla conservative wearing a suit saying, I just think that, we should work hard and make money. And then you put that next to the women screaming at the top of their lungs. What's a regular person going to think? It is backfiring, in my opinion. Now, whether or not Trump wins, is yet to be seen. We got 2 weeks. And it will be like, I'll tell you this, man, suspending the New York Post, locking down their social media was such an insanely desperate move. The mask has been ripped off. There's no more facade. We know exactly what they're doing, and it might work. The fact that you have these women in their cars screaming like lunatics, it's because they're so heavy-handed in their manipulation that these people are trapped in a paranoid and delusional reality where Trump is literally Hitler and he's taking kids and throwing them in cages, and they're freaking out and panicking because they see it all day nonstop. And they can't break out of this just trap from big tech.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Liberals' media model since 2016 has been, Trump shock content. We're going to shock everyone with how evil and bad Trump is. And that's what's leading to the screaming women in their cars. But I will push back on the idea that only allowing the reasonable conservatives to stay on social media is somehow a help to the movement, because they're precisely the ones that are least likely to push back on this craziness. They're the most likely to just apologize, say, oh, you called me a racist. I'm going to explain 10 reasons why I'm not a racist. And that's not convincing to people. That's not persuasive to people. It just looks weak and stupid, and you don't really challenge the arguments. So that's the downside there. Certainly for elections, it might be a help because undecided voters, moderates will just see the craziness of the left and respond accordingly. But ultimately, I think, if Trump loses the election, it will be big tech that stole it. And this is the whole thesis of the book. When you start manipulating search results on Google so that people, it all comes down to undecided voters. So you might be like a heavy news consumer, especially if you're watching this show. You're very clued up on all the issues. Very hard to manipulate you. But think about what an undecided voter, someone who doesn't follow politics every day, is seeing when they go onto Google to find out about the two candidates.
It is endlessly Trump is evil.
Yep.
Endless
all
propaganda.
day, every day.
That's the real thing.
Yeah, but there was a story from Time magazine. This woman went around the country and found nobody cared. Nobody cared. That she would go to these people and say, here's a headline, and say, oh, I don't care about that. And the way they wrote it was, all of these people believe misinformation. What do we do? And it's like, you're in a bubble.
They don't care.
The journalists are in. It's really funny. It's like, here's the way I see it. They're all in the ivory tower, and they're sitting in this room with each other, all laughing and sharing fake news with each other, thinking they're in the real world. And they're not. Regular people don't like Antifa. Call them out. They won't. They don't.
It's true. I mean, you can give these guys all the advantages you want. You can put all their stuff at the top of Google, but if it's bad stuff, if it's bad propaganda, it's going to have the opposite effect. I will read one extract to you from the book, though, because this gets to the heart of how they manipulate people and persuade people.
Do it.
If I can find it.
Yeah, man.
Give me a minute.
I want to hear it.
Where is this?
So what is this? This is their manipulating of.
It's how they pinpoint people's political beliefs.
Oh.
And
you were mentioning. Did you find it?
Right, here we go. So this is a quote from a Facebook source. The plan for polarization is to get people to move closer to the center. We have thousands of people on the platform who have gone from far right. This is the way Facebook defines far right, by the way, not necessarily the way we define it. Who have gone from far right to center in the past year. So we can build a model from those people and try to make everyone else on the right follow the same path. He goes on to explain how this would work. Let's say everyone who goes from far right to center watched video X. Then maybe we adjust the priority of video X in the feed. But it's probably going to be much more complicated than that. So this is the stuff you don't see. We can see like the bans of the New York Post. We can see these high-profile bans. We don't see this like very subtle manipulation that's going on behind the scenes, pinpointing exactly what your beliefs are and tailoring the content to those people. They used to do that, as you say, just based on how interested you are in a certain topic. That's what would drive the algorithm. But it's gotten much more specific than that, and much more focused on changing people's opinions. This is like their attempt at brainwashing. Whether they work or not is another question.
Now here's the best part. Remember that these people think anyone to the anyone to the right of Stalin is far right.
Yep.
So what they're doing is you got a working class dad who's like firing up the grill and having a burger, and they're like, oh, that far right guy, he's a white supremacist. Better feed him content to make him a centrist.
Yeah, we got to
centrist is Bernie Sanders.
Send him the depolarization video immediately.
And also, when you have the right and the left goes way over here, now the center is here, which was further left than it used to be. The normal lefties.
Yep.
So they're dragging people they're trying to like almost radicalize people on the right so that they're now in the new center.
Literally what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's literally what they're doing. They're radicalizing people, and that's why you see a video of these women screaming at the top of their lungs, crying, and like, ah! Look, there are a lot of us, I think the people who are watching this for the most part, you have sought out information. This is the big difference between those who watch the mainstream media and get wrapped up in the fake news and the people who watch shows like this. You have to search for my show. Sometimes YouTube does recommend the clips we do every day. But like I mentioned, my main two channels, Timcast and Timcast News, are not on Google. Google has banned them outright.
I heard that they were back now.
They are not.
Someone
Not
said
true.
they found them.
Nope. These people don't get it. Like people will steal my content and re-upload it, knowing I've been blacklisted, and they can get my views from Google search.
We got to unblacklist Tim's channels.
Can't do it. Google knows. Google knows I know, and I've complained about it to Google. They're doing it on purpose.
It's normal stuff.
They do it on purpose, and that's part of the manipulation. If someone says, did you hear, Joe Biden, this email thing, you will not find my videos giving you the breakdown and the fact checks. It doesn't exist.
This is another area where we've actually literally caught them red-handed. So back in early 2019, I got a leak from a Google insider, and he literally called this leak the smoking gun, proving Google's bias. Like, obviously, lawmakers did nothing about it because we don't have enough smoking guns. But this was YouTube's controversial search query blacklist.
Yeah.
It's an actual list they have inside YouTube with a list of so-called controversial search queries, and whenever they add a term to that list, what it does is it tells the algorithm to prioritize all the videos from the mainstream media and shut out anyone that doesn't meet YouTube standards, meets YouTube's approval. And the reason I found out about this list was because a left-wing journalist had reached out to Google saying, look at all these pro-life videos in the top 10 search results for abortion. Within hours, Google goes in, they alter that file, they reorder the search results completely.
Do you know the name of that journalist?
It was a Slate journalist, if I recall. I can't remember exact name.
And I'm pretty sure she's the one who got Enrique Tarrio banned from Chase Bank.
Oh, right. There are these journalists who make a profession out of deplatforming people in the college industry.
This is what they do. So they'll send a message, which is a veiled threat to a corporation, right? So let's say, Alum's Nachos is a company. Oh. And I see a Proud Boy eating them. I send a message saying, I couldn't help but notice that the Proud Boys were eating your nachos. Do you support white supremacy, and why do you support white supremacy? And they immediately respond with, we hereby disavow, we want nothing. And then the journalist puts out a message, Nacho Chip Company disavows the Proud Boys.
And this is what they did to PewDiePie, right? This is the model. You reach out to everyone's business partners, everyone who's doing business with them, anyone who's giving them a service, and say...
you use loaded questions. Kind of like, what are some of these jokes? You say, when did you stop beating your wife, right? It's like, wait, hold on, it's a loaded question. Like the assumption is, right. So what they'll do is they'll reach out to your business partner, to your partners, and it's almost like tortious interference. They will ask a loaded question. Now, many of these companies, they get this email, and it'll say, we saw the Proud Boys wearing your shirt, Fred Perry. Why do you support white supremacy? And they know there's nothing they can do. The company knows that it's total BS, but they're going to get a PR hit unless they play ball. They don't care about you. So they just say, send them the generic response. We hereby disavow all of that. And then boom. So I talked to people. I was talking to these guys recently, and they wanted to get like a photograph and stuff. And I said, I'm not interested in doing photos with other companies. And I was like, because of the political ramifications. And they're like, no, trust me, these companies don't care. And I said, no, you don't understand. When the company ends up getting inundated by Antifa and the far left, and then not caring about me, issues some stupid statement insulting and defaming me, then I have to deal with them, not the wacko far left. If I'm seen in a photograph, or I don't think I have to worry about this too much. But if there's somebody who is seen in a photograph with, say, Coke, a Coca-Cola executive, then Coke's going to be like, we don't know who this guy is or care, disavow, and they'll put out a statement saying white supremacy is wrong, and we hereby disavow this individual, thus creating a newspaper story calling you a white supremacist. That's the tactic the far left uses. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.